Good thing you asked.
Okay.
Not loading any bullets in it.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the 10 principles, Yang Cheng Fu's 10 principles. Yang Cheng Fu was the person who had developed the 108 posture form. You notice I didn't use the word invented. And the reason why was because Yang style Tai Chi predated Yang Cheng Fu. Yang Cheng Fu lived, I believe his birth date was sometime in the 1880s, and he passed away so it'd be, actually he was 50 years old when he passed away. So that would have been 1886 to 1936. Same year my father was born. Okay, so here, these first three we're talking about structure of Tai Chi. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. So the first one is correct position of head, or sometimes you'll hear it said head upright. And what they're referring to, how many of you guys know where the baby spot is on your head? Okay, find that little baby spot. Now drop your chin slightly until that soft spot on the baby's head, that spot there where the soft spot would be, we're all hard-headed now, so it kind of happens as you get older, you get more hard-headed. So, okay, you can ask me, I'm 70s, I know. So anyway, this where the soft spot would be, you want that push pointing directly at the heavens. So many times you'll hear where they'll say, as if your head is lifting from above. So as if you're lifting. So you want that soft spot, that's pointed at the heavens. So what happens is there's a couple ways you can talk about this. One is you draw your chin in very slightly. The other one is that you know where the third eye is? Right, and this is actually, I think, a Feldenkrais technique. Take and point the third eye straight ahead, like you're looking at somebody with your third eye. And so, now what the Tai Chi classics say is to gaze at the horizon. So you look straight ahead from here with this part of the head lifted, and then you're looking at the horizon. So pretend like, how many of you guys have been to the ocean? Woo-hoo. Look at that, I got everybody on this. So if you look at standing at the shore of the ocean, where the sky and the ocean would meet, that would be where the horizon is, and so where you would cast your eyes is along that line. So if you were looking here, the line would be somewhere just about waist level. Okay, so is that making sense so far?
Yeah.
So let's try that real quick. So we're just going to stand here. Now, normally when I talk about Pong in the structure of Tai Chi, I usually talk about it from the bottom up, but Yang Cheng Fu described it from the top down. So we're going to go from the top down. So the idea is, again, just relax, draw your chin in very, very slightly. You can see if I'm here, right, you can see my fingertip is right below my chin, and I just kind of rest my chin on my fingertip. One of the expressions that I like is they say, as if holding a grapefruit between your chin and your chest. And you see, so pretend like you're holding a grapefruit between your chin and your chest. And so when we talk about correct position of head, that's what we're talking about. Is that the top of the head is there, and the idea is this, that in the Tai Chi we talk about the stretch of the vertebrae, right? And so what happens is I'm actually stretching the vertebrae here, the thoracic part of the vertebrae, by dropping my chin slightly. Now the next one, which is also talking about correct position of head and back, should say chest and back, sorry about that. That goes here, let me do that real quick. I don't know why I put that, probably because I was thinking backward. Chest and back. There we go. So, now when we're talking about correct position of chest and back, we're really talking about the structure of Pong, right? And another one of the ways they describe this is round the back and hollow the chest. How many of you guys have heard that expression? Round the back and hollow the chest. So let's talk about this. We're going to talk about this in terms of not only the chest and back, but also in terms of the pelvic girdle. Okay, so when we're talking about correct position of chest and back, we're drawing our hips forward till we feel a stretch in the lower back. Okay. At the same time, remember the chin as we're dropping that. Now, as I'm doing this here, it's like I'm gathering. I'm going to pull my sternum. I visualize pulling my sternum toward my tailbone while doing an embrace. And that's basically when we talk about correct position of head and back. And I can actually show you real quick. Can I borrow you a second here? So, if I'm doing pung, have correct position of your head and back, and just grab my wrist. Both hands on my wrist. There you go. Okay, now push my hand to my chest. Now as I'm doing this here, you notice I'm nice and relaxed, knees pushing and push as hard as you like. And you can see I'm standing here. That is the value of the correct position of the head and back. Because I'm able to take that force that he's doing, and you see he's shaking and he's pushing so hard. And I'm still completely relaxed. I'm having a good time doing. Yeah, baby. Okay, so now what that means is as he's pushing, means I can now move his force where I want it to go because he's not going to blast through me. Thank you. That basically, when they talk about the secret to effortless power in Tai Chi, right? So Tai Chi is a martial art, right? And when they talk about secret to effortless power, what we're talking about is by this pung, by correct position of chest and back, we are unifying the body as one unit. So we can come all the way down to here, right? We're all the way up to here. We want that hips drawn forward, chest drawn inward. So what they say is round the back. One of the observations, one of the ways they sometimes describe this is turtle back. Except for you'd have a turtle with a fairly shallow, rather than a tortoise, it'd be more
Water
fair.
turtle. Water turtles have flat backs.
Yeah, water turtle. So here, now, that's the idea. So when we're here, we just have that gentle stretch. So that's three. So these first three, again, we're talking about pung. And now we'll go back down to relax the waist. And we talk. Come on in, guys. We love you. We took a vote. Eleanor abstained. Okay, so now this is where we talk about relaxed waist. So we want to emphasize that a little bit because I talked earlier about pulling the hips forward from the lower abdomen, right? But in order to do that and effectively have it, you have to relax the lumbar part of the back. You have to relax the glutes and the hip flexors, and then engage the lower dantian until you feel a gentle stretch in the lumbar area. In the Tai Chi classics, they describe that as opening the Ming Men, which is a pressure point which is opposite of the navel, right? So if you take your belly button and have the spot opposite, you want to feel that area open up as you pull your hips forward. And like I said, you're relaxing these hips. What Western exercise physiology says, in order to stretch a set of muscles, you must flex the opposing set of muscles. And in order to stretch a set of muscles, you must relax those muscles. So what I'm doing is I'm relaxing my hip flexors, I'm relaxing my glutes, I'm relaxing the lumbar area. And then to talk about the part where I engage from the opposite end is I pull my hips slightly forward so that I feel my hips so that I feel my abdomen drawing my hips forward, and I feel the vertebrae in my lumbar part of my back opening up. That's what I want to feel when I'm doing it. So that's the essential posture, right? So, like I said, the first three have to do with pung. Now the next one has to do with a couple of things. We first learned this distinguished solid and empty. We first learned this in terms of distinguished solid and empty in terms of stepping. What Yang Cheng Fu had said at one point is the double weightedness is the cause of clumsiness. And what he's talking about, when he's talking about that, he's talking about stepping with weight in your foot. So whenever you go to move a foot, and we talk about this in Tai Chi walking, whenever a foot is moved, the weight must be 100% in the supporting leg and then the other leg comes out with absolutely no weight in it, and then I slowly shift. So that's where we first hear about distinguish solid and empty, is here. Which leg is full, which leg is empty, right? So a full leg where all your weight is solid, and a leg where you have no weight in it is empty, right? So does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the other part of this distinguish solid and empty has to do with application, right? So one of the things that we talk about with application, and this has to do with the poem that goes with roll back or new, right? And it says, lead them into emptiness. When they have lost their balance, you may attack if you wish. So if Bo is pushing on me here, I'm going to go just keep going pushing. I'm going to go ahead and lead her into emptiness. So doing that, I have to distinguish. So when I start here and she starts to push me, my front leg is full. As she pushes me, I distinguish, make my front leg empty like this, and now I'm going to take her in that empty direction. So lead her into emptiness, and when she loses her balance, you may attack if you wish. So that's the idea. So you have two things. One is when we talk about distinguish solid and empty, we're talking about that in terms of stepping, and that is where you first learn it. How many of you guys have heard me say step empty, step with no weight in your foot? Right? That's your rudimentary distinguish solid and empty. Then later on you can carry that off into push hands, and after you carry it through push hands, you can then expand on that and take it into actual self-defense applications. So if that's making sense. Okay, so the next one is sink shoulders and elbows. And this is actually, to me, that should be farther up here in the structure, rather than the movement there, but I wasn't the one who numbered these, so don't blame me. Okay, so sink shoulders and elbows. When we're talking about that, one of the things that you'll hear sometimes said in the Tai Chi Classics is they say, hold your elbows as if they weighed 50 pounds. How many of you guys have heard me say that? Okay, so in the 10 important points, they say that sink shoulders and elbows. They mean that your elbows should be pointed down and your shoulders should be relaxed. And I can actually take this again. I'm going to borrow a bow again. And she describe my wrist like, and push me. You notice as I do this, watch. You notice my elbow is down. And the harder she pushes, the more I relax and the more my elbow gets pointed at my hip. Now watch what happens again. Right here for a second. Now watch, I lift my elbow and shoulder. Go ahead and push. So this, when I have my elbow and shoulder down, this allows me to direct that force into the ground. Right? Now, if my shoulder and elbow is up, it's being caught in my back. And then basically what happens is you're given a choice at that point. You can either let the person push you or injure your back. So that's the idea. So elbow and shoulder are always down. You notice when I do pong, and my hands are up here, my elbow is below my shoulder. So that means you can see here, in fact, if we take this posture here, like this, and I hold my elbow up, there's the line, shoulder, elbow. So not this, shoulder, elbow. So you can see there, that's almost a 45-degree drop. Almost a 45-degree angle from my shoulder to my elbow. So when we talk about sink shoulders and elbows, roll your elbows down, point your elbows toward your hip. So no matter where you're standing, I'll give you some examples. Fair Lady works shuttles. notice my elbow is still, even though I'm doing this as a high block, right? As a high block, my elbow is still pointed at my hip. Right? No matter what's happening, if I do fan through back, both elbows pointed at my hips, even though it's a high technique, both elbows are pointed at my hips. Right? Fair Lady Work Shuttle, say fan through back. No matter what motion you're talking about, turn around and chop. Now this is one that I'm constantly having to correct people on, is turn around and chop. What I notice is people doing this like this. This is called a middle block in karate. Right? It's called a middle block in karate. Okay? But what we're actually doing when we do that is actually in island arts, in Filipino, Indonesian arts, they'll refer to this as a roof block. So you can see it's the shape of a roof with snow on it. Right?
Rain. Yeah, a lot of rain.
Huh? Rain?
Rain.
Yeah. Roof block. Yeah, but they don't have snow in Indonesia. Okay, so that's the idea. So when I do that, so even when I'm doing this motion here, turn around and chop, you notice that the elbow is below my wrist, way below my wrist. Okay, so that's the idea. Shoulder must be down. Shoulders must be down and relaxed. One of the things that's interesting, and I've noticed this universally, even very advanced martial artists, you teach them a new form, like yourselves. You teach them a new form, and their shoulders instantly do this. And it seems to be something that everybody does when they learn something new. Your shoulders go up like this. You know? So you want to keep it down, so keep the shoulders down. Okay, so use intention instead of force. Okay, so here, use intention instead of force. Sometimes you'll see that translated as use the mind. Intention is a more accurate thing. With the word, Chinese word is yi, and yi actually translates as awareness and intention. So it's basically awareness and intention. Awareness, how many of you guys have thrown a baseball? Everybody here throwing a baseball? That's okay. So when you throw a baseball, let's say we're at the carnival, right? We got those milk jugs stacked up. What you do is you look at the milk jug and then throw the ball. You don't take the ball and aim it. The intention is the same way. Here comes Jonathan. Intention is the same way that basically when I'm doing intention, I'm going to borrow a bow again. So just from here, just grab this. Now if she goes back here, she goes to push me. If I want her to move backward, rather than looking here, I'm going to look back there. So you notice what I did. If you do that again, you can actually see, I'm kind of looking and pointing at one of those trees off in the park there. And then I move toward the park. She's trying to, so that's the idea. So it's always that move back, you know. So
It was like a boing.
yeah, yeah.
You took me and then bounced me back.
But palm,
Yes,
boing, boing,
yes.
boing,
I
boing.
felt that.
Right? So when we're talking about this here, use intention. That's the idea. So when I'm going to move somebody, right? Let me borrow Jonathan here.
Yeah, move something bigger than me.
It's more impressive to move a big guy than it is, you know. If I pick up on Linda, everyone go, oh yeah, like we've never seen that before. Somebody big picking on somebody little. So as he's going here to push, right? Rather than root here, what I'm going to actually do is look at the area behind him. See what I mean? So I'm not doing this. In fact, you can see here, I lose when I do that. When I look at the wall behind him, he moves back. So use intention. Use yi. One of my favorite stories is about Grandmaster Luke. Remember Joe?
Oh yeah.
So Joe was competing in a push hands match down in Dallas, and Master Luke came up to him like this, big secret, put his arm around him and says, use your yi. And so that was the idea. Use your intention. So that's really the thing, is when you're going to move or you're going to punch. When I go to punch somebody, watch, I'm just going to here, watch. I'm gonna not actually punch Jonathan, but I'm gonna punch as if his head was right here. You see. As you see, my fist is way beyond his head. So that I'm always projecting beyond the area that I'm trying to strike. So it's use of intention. Coordination of upper and lower body. This is something that a lot of people sometimes don't get. So a lot of people get the idea that the upper body is moving from the hips and that it should be relaxed. Well, actually, what happens is the energy, the force, is created in the ground. As I push into the ground with the ball of my foot, that's beginning to create force. Now, to coordinate that, I pull with my left hip forward. I'm pulling with the opposite hip, whichever way I'm turning, I'm pulling with that hip. And that's unifying my shoulders and hips. So everything, all movement is directed by the hips. So there's two important points about that. One is that if the movement isn't directed by the hips, it's basically has no force behind it. The other thing is that unless I have it all unified, the force that I'm creating by pushing into the ground with the ball of the foot, pulling with my hip and sinking into the front foot, won't translate into the technique I'm using. Right? I might as well just use an arm. So upper and lower body must move together. So you notice when I come here, let's say, and I do brush knee twist, you notice here, as my hand, as I bring my foot in and turn, that turn lifts my hand and brings the foot in. See here? That turn lifts my hand and brings in the foot. As I sink out, my turn of my sinking into the gua, that brings my foot out and drops my elbows. Then as I shift my weight and pull with the hip, that creates the entire force, so that all that force is being used as one unit. Is that making sense? You can see that in Repulsed Monkey. Watch, hand and foot move together. Hand and foot move together. Whole body moves together as I execute the technique. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Is anybody more confused than they were when they came in?
Yes.
I can't leave until everybody's confused. Okay, so now we have harmony of internal and external. And basically what that's referring to is two things. One of the things that's important about this is that what they're actually talking about is harmony between your intention, the yi, and the principles of the internal martial arts coming from the Dantian, and the external movement. Right? So it's a harmony of not only my intention in the movement that I'm doing, but there's a harmony between the external movement. I'm actually applying that to external intention. One of the things that happens a lot in modern times specifically is the modern human being likes to pigeonhole everything. Okay, so external and external, internal and external, oftentimes they get that pigeonholed, and they'll say, well, if you're moving like this, it's internal, and if you're moving like X, it's external. Whereas where these terms, internal and external, as I understand it, I've been told this several times, originated with Sun Lun Tang. The terminology, internal and external, originated with Sun Lun Tang. And at that time, when he was using the terms internal and external, he was talking about martial arts which were native to China being internal. That would be Tai Chi, Xing Yi, Bagua, Liao Bafa, and Shuai Jiao. Those are all native Chinese martial arts. When they're talking about external, how many of you guys know the story of Bodhidharma? Bodhidharma why did Bodhidharma go to the west? Right? Okay. So what happens is when we talk about Bodhidharma is the person who was credited with starting Zen, or in China they call it Chan Buddhism, and in Japan they call it Zen. Okay. Bodhidharma was the one who started that, according to legend. That he was responsible for founding Zen, and also responsible for founding Shaolin martial arts. So many times when they talk about external, they're talking about specifically external martial arts. Back in the original use of the term, it was specifically having to do with martial arts which had their roots in India as opposed to in China. And that was basically in terms. But the one thing I would like to say that is there's actually no historical or archaeological proof that Bodhidharma ever existed. Okay? There's just no proof. It's kind of like,
So where's the harmony factor come in?
huh?
So you have culturally two different approaches.
Yeah, two different approaches, and
Where
it's,
does the harmony come in?
where's the harmony? Well, basically, they managed to do that in Shaolin. They took the native Chinese martial arts, and the external martial arts influenced it. So you have,
So just simply a
yeah,
fluid combination of.
yeah. Well, that's what I'm just saying. This was the original use of that term. The way that Yang Cheng Fu was using it, he was talking about it in terms of body mechanics.
Okay.
And when Yang Cheng Fu was talking about it, he's talking about it in terms of body mechanics. The idea of moving from the Dantian, using the breath, that's all we're being referred to as internal. External would be having that expression. When someone does Fa Jing, in fact, so some of the applications that you'll see done in more advanced internal martial arts, anything where you'll see people walk around with very heavy wooden balls, and they'll walk like this. And that's definitely not an internal training. That's very external. So internal is training the internal body mechanics. External would be training your brute strength.
I got you.
Okay, so continuity of movement. I want to move back up there one second. And that the thing about training external muscle structure, where is important, you don't need to be strong to make a Tai Chi technique work. But you do need to be strong to make it not hurt you while you're using it. So what happens is, now Jonathan can tell you this. I did a thing where they tested me, where I was doing a thing. People were running up and punching this pad, and they were rating it. I have the same strike force with my punch as a .45 caliber slug. Jonathan's seen it, witnessed it. Yeah. I have the same strike force as a .45. What that means is that if I ever punch somebody in the chest, their sternum is going through their heart. So, but, huh?
Try not to do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, the problem with that is I just can't afford the lawyer's fees, you know. So, anyway, when we talk about that is also, if I don't have the physical strength to back that up, what I'm going to be doing is injuring all the joints in my arm, right? Now, finally, continuity of movement. Continuity of movement is basically the idea, in Chen style Tai Chi, they refer to it as silk reeling. And the idea when I'm doing this, and you guys have heard me talk about this, is that the end of every movement is the beginning of the next movement. So I don't stop here like that and then do the movement. We flow through each movement, but complete each movement. One of the things that happens lots of times when people are trying to get continuity of movement is they start skipping this. So you end up with something like this. It's almost 1 o'clock, right? So here we go. And rather than following through to 1 o'clock, they'll skip over to here, and they skip the ending and the beginning of a movement. And you see this a lot. You'll see brush knee twist, and they're here, and they don't quite do the movement. It's not quite done, you know. They didn't. So what happens is, watch, as we do brush knee twist, I'll try this real quick here. So from here, just step out. As you feel the energy sink into your front leg, use that sink to create the next movement. That sink is also what's used to create the pop in the strike, right? But that's also what's being used to start the next movement. So I'm not stopping, like if you look at some styles of karate and contemporary wushu. Contemporary wushu is really bad about this. They'll come in here and go, ha, phew, and they'll hold that for 10 seconds or something, you know, because it's all about the pose. It's not how you feel, it's how you rook. And you rook marvelous. Okay. So, you knew that one, huh? So here, that the idea of continuity of movement is that from the moment that you start here, and this is basically, when you talk about it, you have, the long form has 108 postures. It has 8 basic jings, or forces. Jings. Sometimes jing will be translated as force, which is the most accurate translation, but sometimes you'll hear it translated as energy or technique. But force is the most translation. When they talk about 8 basic forces, so you have 108 postures, 8 basic forces, 5 steps, which are related to the 5 elements. The eight basic forces are related to the Bagua. The 5 steps are related to the 5 elements, and the 2 intentions are related to yin and yang. And so what you have is, you have 108 postures, 8 forces, 5 steps, 2 intentions, and 1 movement. That's exactly it. You actually read that one. I like that. 1 movement, so that when you're coming in here and doing the movement, it is 1 continuous movement. It doesn't stop. So from the moment I do this to the moment that I do this, I don't stop moving. And the danger of that is then that you start running your techniques together. So when you're first learning Tai Chi, you end up looking a bit like the robot. You go, it looks more robotish, but as you get into it for a few years, you're able to start to flow. So if you're newish, which is most everybody in the room here, don't be upset with yourself if you're kind of moving rigidly for the first 5 years or so. Okay, now finally, tranquility in movement. This is the fun one. Actually, one of the things I like about that idea of tranquility in movement is that it should be, you should be kind of a meditation when we're doing Tai Chi. Tai Chi is oftentimes referred to as moving meditation. So when I'm doing this, I am looking to have a tranquil mind, to not have a busy mind and not have busy movements while doing the form. One of the things you can tell is when the form gets really busy, it means the mind is really busy too. Okay, so when you're doing some tranquility movement, one of my favorite things, I was, some of you guys know that I went to Buddhist, I went to Buddhist chaplaincy school, and one of the places we used to do retreats was in Barre, Massachusetts, and I loved that place. And the reason why is the symbol of Barre, Massachusetts, the slogan of Barre, Massachusetts is tranquil and alert. Just like Tai Chi, be tranquil and alert. Okay, thank you guys.